Hi, I'm Joe from As the Joe Flies,
And I'm Leslie from Trips with Tykes.
and welcome back to Disney Deciphered. So, Leslie is fresh back from her quick trip to Disneyland, media trip invited by Disney to check out Tiana's Bayou adventure. We'll hit that at the end of the episode. But if you are a Patreon subscriber, you already heard her short. I mean, it was just a 2-day trip, so a 2-day on the ground trip report about what was going on. You can check us out, patreon.com/Disney Deciphered. All paid subscribers get these bonus trip reports. I'll be going in December. Leslie's going on a Disney cruise before I go in December. So lots of content coming for you guys. Have a quick shout out and thank you to a new Patreon subscriber, Carrie L. Thank you so much for subscribing, and thank you to all our subscribers as we enter this Thanksgiving season. We just really appreciate everyone who supports the podcast. Now, Leslie, you went down for Tiana's Bayou Adventure. We'll talk about that a little bit, and we've talked about that quite a bit already. But looking at your pictures as I was following you on Instagram, instagram.com/trips with Tykes, by the way, if you want to check her out there. I was following your Instagram stories, and I was like, oh man, the Disneyland castle, which I am constantly never impressed by because it seems so small. Well, I was impressed by its Christmas decorations, and I was just seeing like all the holiday stuff that was up at Disneyland, and I realized we had never talked about the holidays at Disneyland. And so I thought this would be a great time, great episode to talk about all the different holiday offerings, which they change from time to time. I feel like they change more at Disneyland than they do at Disney World, although fairly consistent.
Yeah, I mean they add new things, but it's more around the margins. They haven't changed any of the centerpiece offerings in a very long time, but we'll get into that. But they do seem to innovate more at Disneyland generally, and I think you can see this during the holidays as well.
That's awesome. So let's talk about Disneyland. I think the first thing that I'm curious about, they don't start as aggressively as Disney World, or do they? Like Disney World, famous for October 31st, you go to bed, you wake up, Magic Kingdom, it's turned everything from pumpkins into wreaths. What about Disneyland? When do the holidays generally run in Disneyland?
Well, it's tricky. So I'd say for the last 5, 6 years, I mean, starting before COVID, so maybe even a little bit longer than that, Disneyland really was like it started kind of with Thanksgiving and then it went through New Year's. And about 5 or 6 years ago, they were like, you know what, we need to include the Veterans Day holiday weekend in that, and they expanded it backwards a little bit. So you would see a lot of holiday decorations going up November 1st. And in fact, the snow on top of the castle goes up every year before Halloween happens. So the decorations are maybe a little more gradual how they roll out at Disneyland. But this year, and I think it was because of Tiana's Bayou Adventure launching, they're actually starting the holidays later. They started at November 15th, which was after the Veterans Day holiday weekend. But I think that is an anomaly. I'm hopeful that we'll get a little bit more time next year and that they'll go back to the old schedule. But this is one of those things where Disneyland's kind of doing things a little bit differently this year, and maybe they're experimenting, or maybe it's just because of the idiosyncrasies of a particular year. But yeah, stay tuned.
I'm sorry, did you say snow on the castle before Halloween was over?
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. So, but yeah, usually goes up the last week of October. Maybe they just don't have the number of cast members to do all of the overlays at, the different parks. I don't know. Maybe it's not as big of a resort, so they don't have the manpower necessarily.
I guess. Yeah. Snow before Halloween in this economy. Amazing. All right. So we're ride focused, or not ride focused. Our orbits tend to go around the rides and the attractions at the Disney parks. So there are a few overlays that happen. The first is the Haunted Mansion overlay, because what's the exact term for it? It's a Nightmare Before Christmas overlay, but they kill two birds with one stone there.
Right. It's just called Haunted Mansion Holiday. And because it's based on Nightmare Before Christmas, you get Halloween and Christmas mixed together. So that overlay goes in place before the Halloween season. And this year, again, weird because there's all that construction going on over by Tiana's Bayou Adventure. And they're actually doing a big redo to the queue at Haunted Mansion. So it actually opened in the summertime this year, which is not usual. They didn't have time, I guess, to open the regular ride and then convert it, because it does take, I think, about a week, 10 days. More. It's a significant overlay. This is not just like a little change. I mean, this is a whole new ride, and it is pretty awesome. I mean, it's been going on, I think, for a little over 20 years, if I remember right. And it's a fantastic redo of this attraction. One thing I love about it, that I loved about it when my kids were younger, is somehow Jack Skellington is not as scary as Ghosts. He's more cartoonish, more lovable in a way. And so for younger kids,
It's the smile.
it's the smile. I don't know. Everything's just kind of, I mean, at least with my kids, they were not scared by it. So even though they weren't quite ready when they were toddlers to do Haunted Mansion regular, you could kind of ease them into it with Haunted Mansion Holiday. So I do love that.
So this year it was on a virtual queue. I wasn't clear. Is it because of all the construction, or should people expect it to be on a virtual queue I mean, if you're going 2024, it's going to be a virtual queue for sure. But should we expect that in 2025, or is that just a one-time thing, you think?
That's a one-time thing because of the construction going on. They're still doing things to the queue over there. So it's usually a lightning lane multi-pass attraction most of the time. And it is a more popular multi-pass attraction during the Halloween and Christmas season. So all of sort of your strategies for when you want to ride it and when you want to pick it need to be a little bit different during the Christmas season. So something to keep in mind for future years if you're listening to this down the road.
What other ride overlays do we have?
So It's a Small World Holiday is my favorite version of the ride as well. So what they do is they decorate the facade, and they have that grand facade at Disneyland, unlike, what you have at Disney World, which is kind of indoors, and it's covered in just thousands and thousands and thousands of lights. There's an evening light up of just the facade of Small World Holiday. But in the interior, you have a mashup of the traditional song and Christmas carols being sung by the dolls, and you have lots of decorations everywhere. So it really is something that's special. Everybody wants to ride it after dark. So it's a lightning lane multi-pass attraction. You can usually easily walk on it for the first part of the day and, get a reasonable lightning lane time in the afternoons. But as soon as the sun starts to set, then everybody's trying to grab those multi-pass times, so they go really quickly. So again, different strategy during the holidays to ride that attraction.
Yeah, I've heard people call it the Tron of Disneyland. So, not really. But, everyone wants to ride Tron at night. Okay,
That's
terrible,
right.
terrible dad joke. All right, what's the last attraction that is a different overlay during the holiday season?
So you have two smaller ride overlays over in Disney California Adventure. Mater's Junkyard Jamboree becomes Mater's Jingle Jamboree, and then Luigi's Rollickin' Roadsters is Luigi's Joy to the Whirl. And these are smaller ride overlays. Basically, all that happens is you get some decorations on the ride itself, and then you get unique holiday music. It's really cute actually on Mater because, of course, it's Larry, the cable guy, and he's singing Christmas carols with his, usual Mater voice. So I love it. It's fun. It's great for younger kids, but these are not major overlays. The rides don't go down for a long period of time to prepare them in advance of the holiday season. These are just kind of bonuses in my mind.
All right, good to know. Just a little bit of, just holiday vibes, which is great. Speaking of holiday vibes, I think what makes a big difference is the entertainment, and it just seems like there's a lot going on at Disneyland. And I think what is really exciting about the holidays in Disneyland is that the stuff that is going on, you do not need an extra ticket. Like we have Jollywood Nights and Mickey's Very Merry Christmas Party at Disney World, but Disneyland, it seems like all this holiday stuff, the entertainment, you have access to it just with a regular ticket.
Yeah, so no holiday parties. They experimented a couple years ago with one holiday party very briefly, and it did not last. And as a result, everything's open to everybody, which is great. But the negative, I guess, is that there's almost so much to do that you can't do it all. And when my kids were younger, I often would take like a 3-day trip during the holidays when we could pull our kids out of school and things like that. And even with 3 days, which is as long as I ever go to Disneyland, you really can't do and see it all. So just kind of be prepared for that. But the good news is even if you have like a short trip, you're going to get to cram a lot of holiday stuff into it and get a lot of bonuses and extras. So let's go really quickly over some of the bigger entertainment offerings. If you go to my blog, tripswithtex.com, shameless self-promotion, I actually have a guide there to the holidays at Disneyland. So you can check out all of the smaller items. But broadly speaking, there is Believe in Holiday Magic, which is the evening spectacular in Disneyland, and that's a fireworks show, and it's fireworks nightly, which is great because that sometimes does not happen at Disneyland just because of schedules with neighbors. So during the Christmas season, you get that every night, at least this year. And Then also in Disneyland, you have a big parade, a Christmas fantasy parade, which is, I don't know how long that parade has been going, like 30 years, but it's a classic at this point. So you get Santa and you get the galloping reindeer daytime parade. So that's something that a lot of folks will camp out for.
So quick question. Does that replace the typical Disneyland parade and it's like just the normal parade in the holiday season is this Christmas parade?
Yes, and I don't even know if that there is a typical Disneyland daytime parade these days anymore because they keep putting things in and taking them out. So, but yes, that is the only parade that you will see during the holiday season in Disneyland is that parade, and it's twice daily usually. And then over at DCA, you have another nighttime spectacular. There's World of Color Season of Light. So that's a special World of Color show just for the holidays. So you get that, which is nice. And then you have a lot of other smaller scale musical performances. My favorite, Viva Navidad, which has the three caballeros, Joe, which was so amazing, has been cut back this year to only Saturdays and Sundays. Two major thumbs down for that. But they have replaced it with two newer musical performances, one with Miguel from Coco and one with Mirabel from Encanto. So you definitely are getting some of that Latin flavor in the holidays, which is really a lot of fun over at DCA.
Wait, so is it like on the weekends all three are going and then on the weekdays just the two minus or how does that work?
Weekends is Viva Navidad, weekdays are the other two.
Okay. Got it. So if you're there on a Friday so I guess this is a good question. Does weekend start on Friday or is it just Saturday and Sunday?
Just Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, but this can change and this does change every year. So this is where you really have to check Showtime's guides depending upon when you're going because Disney is not consistent on these. I mean, that's great because they're adding new things and taking, things away and that's nice, but it's not predictable year to year.
So Santa's in the parade. I saw this year there's like another Santa thing happening. Hopefully it's not happening at the same time, don't want to break the illusion. But what's going on? What did they add this year?
So this is really great. And I did not get to experience this because I was there during the preview, so it hadn't launched yet. But over in the Fantasyland Theater, there is a big celebration called Holiday Fun with Santa and Friends. And I did go to Pixar Fest this year, and they had something similar there at Pixar Fest. They're kind of just taking over that whole area and having it be a Santa meet and greet and activities for little kids and dance parties and things like that. They actually used to have something like this at Disneyland a long time ago at Big Thunder Ranch, which my kids were little. We loved it. This was before Galaxy's Edge was built, and that's Big Thunder Ranch got torn down. So this is kind of the return of that. So I am super excited to see this. A great place for families just to kind of let loose and let their kids, have fun. It was very cute what they did at Pixar Fest. And so I think Disneyland is going to be doing more of things like this at the Fantasyland Theater. The downside is there's not a show at the Fantasyland Theater. Like it's just being taken over by these parties now.
So the Fantasyland Theater normally, is there a show during like the regular times or it's just lays fallow during the non-holiday seasons?
Lays fallow, and it has often laid fallow and then nothing has been in there. There hasn't been a show and there hasn't been this kind of celebration. So I guess we should be happy that they're putting something in there and it's not just dead. But this is where they had like a Lion King show. They've had various things over the years there, and it's just hit or miss as to whether the budget and the guest demand make it make sense. This is an outdoor theater for folks who don't know what this is. It's kind of tucked next to Small World on your way to Toontown by the Disneyland Railroad. So it's open air, but it has a cover over it. So it's kind of an enclosed space, but not like a dark indoor theater.
Got it. All right, so Epcot has its International Festival of the Holidays, and we know that all the different countries in the World Showcase are all dressed up, and you get stories from some of the different cultures, holiday stories. What is the Festival of the Holidays at Disneyland? Is it something similar or something totally different with the same name, a la Lightning Lane Multipass?
So it's technically not the same name, which gets me every time, Joe. It's Festival of Holidays. There is no the. I do not understand why there's
And
a
no
the.
international at the beginning either.
No, but I don't understand why there's a the in the world version and not a the in the land version. It drives me crazy every year. But anyway, Festival of Holidays at Disneyland is a celebration of all different holidays around the world. You've got Three Kings Day and Diwali and Hanukkah and Christmas and Kwanzaa. And so every sort of winter holiday, like, and winter broadly speaking, because Diwali was already a while ago. So anyway, you kind of rope those in, and the food, I would say, is not as international for sure as Epcot's version, but it's just good food festival food, and it's a lot of and the festival itself is more than just the food. You also have just like the performances from different groups and things like that. So, and the decorations. So it's just an excuse to have a food festival that has a broader theme. So I got to try a lot of the foods. It soft launched when I was there for the media event, and maybe not quite as many booths as I remember in the past, but the food is generally very, very good. A lot of holiday flavors. Like I went to one called Merry Mashups that had like a holiday mash bowl, and it was like mashed potatoes and cranberries, and it had actually chicken bites on it. It was so good. Everybody that I talked to thought that was the best dish of the season. They have the usual Instagrammable Mickey macarons, things like that. So you just kind of roam the festival. They have a sip and savor pass, which is they have at all the food festivals at Disneyland, that you can buy like a single pass, and then you can use it to redeem for 4 or 8 different food items. So if you do your math right, you can save across, your purchases. But you have to buy the right things with the pass, because if you buy the cheap things, you won't get your money's worth. But if you buy the pricey things, you'll save a fair bit of money. So got to experience that. It's great. I love the food festivals at DCA. Really kind of amps things up. It also draws people away from the rides, so it makes the ride lines kind of more reasonable in the grand scheme of things, or at least distributes the crowds better, in my opinion.
So that sounds like a lot of fun. Now, there are, I guess, other miscellaneous things happening. It just feels like there's like a lot of little things that happen during the holiday season at Disneyland and California Adventure. So any other notable, I guess, touches that Disney puts in during the holidays?
Yeah, so just lots of little things, and you'll stumble on them. Like the Dapper Dans are singing, Christmas carols, and there's a new character meal at Storytellers Cafe that's Christmas themed this year, and they're launching a scavenger hunt at Downtown Disney, like one of those paid scavenger hunts where you can look for things. I think it's called Chippendale's Ornament Trail this year. So that's new. And then they're also having Santa in all 3 of the on-property hotels. So even if you're not in the parks, you're going back for like an afternoon break, you might be able to see Santa that way. There's, a gorgeous tree in the Grand Californian with the gingerbread house. So lots of things going on all over the resort, and tons of food, tons and tons and tons of food, pretty much at every restaurant at Disneyland. So the menus really get an overhaul at all the restaurants, like quick service included. So you can have some specialty food items, and then like, fun holiday churros. So it really is immersive. It really is widespread. This is not Six Flags holiday overlay. This is really everywhere. And it's sort of nice to see that kind of money being spent at Disneyland for guests who don't have to pay for an extra party ticket.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like I'd like to end this holiday thing just asking you, it just feels like the vibes at Disneyland are really good during the holidays. How much would you recommend people go during the holiday season versus, going at other times?
It's my favorite time of year to go, even a little bit more than Halloween time. I do just sort of like that there's so much going on that I don't have to buy the ticket, that for Oogie Boogie Bash that you do at Halloween. I also love the weather. The weather is so amazing in November and December for the most part. I mean, obviously you can get the occasional rainstorm, but it's much cooler because a lot of the Halloween season can be really hot. All of September, early October in Southern California can be really, really warm. So I like that it's more pleasant for park touring, in my opinion, and you still get the long hours most of the time for the holiday season. There's a great window to go if you have kids with flexible schedules, and this is what we would do when my kids were younger was go the first week of December. So, because it's very, very, very busy during Thanksgiving week, very, very busy between Christmas and New Year's. But if you can go before kids are out of school or in between the periods when kids are out of school between Thanksgiving and Christmas, it can really be a sweet spot. So that was actually, I guess I have a soft spot in my heart for the holidays because the first trip we took with my daughter when she was a toddler was during the holiday season, that first week of December. And it really is special. I think it is magical. We use that word way too much with Disney fandom, but it does feel awesome. And the lights, like you say, on the castle, the decorations are really quite beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same reason I'm taking my youngest down in December to Disney World, just because I do love the holidays at Disney and it seems like they're great on both coasts. So thank you for enlightening me a little bit about what's going on in Disneyland. Episode's not over yet. You were there actually to check out Tiana's Bayou Adventure Disneyland version. So let's take a quick break and then we'll talk about that really quickly before we get out of here. All right, Leslie, every week for the last couple of weeks, you and I have been messaging each other because someone on SNL's writing staff is obviously a Disney fan because they're making Disney jokes all the time on Weekend Update. And the latest joke was something to the effect of Disney fans complaining because they got wet on a water ride. So let's start. You rode Tiana's Bayou Adventure. How many times did you ride Tiana's during your media preview?
4 times. I don't take breaks on media access opportunities. So it wasn't as many. I rode 7 times on Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, and I believe 5 on Rise of the Resistance. So it wasn't a record, but it was solid.
Is it true? Do you get much wetter? Because now you've done both on the two coasts within like the last 2 months. So is Disneyland's version, do you get soaked?
Yes, you get soaked. And I don't think I got soaked as much as regular guests will get soaked because every time I rode, it was either me in the flume by myself or me with one other person. And the heavier the flume, the lower it sits and the more the waves wash into the flume. But I still got very, very, very wet. So people need to be aware of this. I mean, I got nicely refreshed at Walt Disney World. I mean, it wasn't like my shoes were wrecked or my shirt was soaked. I mean, I had water visible on me, but this is potentially a full wave of water hitting you in the face or the chest or the shoes. So people really do need to be aware of that. Depending upon where you are, it really can be just massive amounts of water. And then it sloshes in the bottom of the flume as you're riding. And so it really will soak your feet. I wore Crocs because I knew I was going to be riding this again and again. And I didn't know when I went whether it was going to be cold or not. I mean, thankfully, when I was there, it ended up being like a 78-degree day, but that's not normal for this time of year. It just was a weird single warm day. So people do really need to be ready for that. And everybody pretty much at the media event was wearing ponchos. I mean, a couple of brave people weren't, and I did wear a poncho. And I will tell you that the wall of water went down the neck of my poncho. So just, that's what we're talking about, Joe.
All right. Well, I'm sure my kids are thrilled listening to this, but for those of us adults out there who do not like sitting in wet shoes, definitely something to bear in mind. What other differences did you notice between the Disneyland version and the Disney World version?
So, of course, the flume is different at Disneyland. You're sitting just one by one by one, like Matterhorn style. So that's something that people need to know about. And I think that's part of the reason that you sit a little lower, you get a little wetter, but that does make the ride a little bit more fast paced. The flume is a little more erratic, but like in a good way, so that you actually feel like you're on a flume ride as opposed to basically on a coaster that's surrounded by water, which is what I feel a little bit more on the Disney World version. So we did hear from one of the Imagineers, and I was surprised that Disney put this out there, but they confirmed that the ride was designed for Disneyland because it was designed during lockdown. The Imagineers had access to Splash Mountain during lockdown to then design the exact layout and the different scenes. So a lot of people have said this, that the ride flows a little bit better story-wise through Disneyland. There's fewer dead spaces because it was designed for that physical space. And then they, of course, adapted it for the longer ride at Walt Disney World. So it is shorter, but I mean, generally everything is pretty much the same. It's just in different places because the layout's different. It didn't feel any different to me in terms of the substance at all. It's a fun family ride. It's a water ride. You're going to get wet. Lots of animatronics. I mean, to me, that's the highlight of the ride is the animatronics. I don't really think the story is that powerful to me. Like, there's not that tension that we've talked about with the Disney World version, but the animatronics are impressive. The songs are catchy. If you like getting wet, you will get very wet. It'll be great on a hot day. Not so great this time of year. It's a good addition, and it fits really nicely into New Orleans Square. I mean, technically it's a different area of the park. They're calling it Bayou Country, but it flows very nicely from New Orleans Square to where it's located at Disneyland. I think it's a better fit for the theming at Disneyland versus World.
All right. Well, that's Tiana's. Anything else that you got to do on your media trip that's worth sharing? Any other areas opened up that weren't open before that is going to be open to guests now that Tiana's is up and running?
So they have a couple of shops that they've added that are very cute, lots of Tiana's merchandise. And then they've opened up an area next to Haunted Mansion Holiday or Haunted Mansion where they're just trying to make the flow better for guests. And this is a long time plan at Disneyland. They started it with Project Stardust in advance of Galaxy's Edge opening. So they have this whole new area right next to Haunted Mansion, and they're, again, still working on the queue there. So lots of stuff feels a little bit different over in that side of the park, New Orleans Square and Bayou Country. So it's looking good. It's looking good. Hopefully the guests are going to flow better, but we're not quite there yet. We got to wait for that final construction on Haunted Mansion to be complete.
All right. Well, glad you got to go. Glad you got to go 4 times. That's probably more than you're going to go in the next 3 years combined, most likely. If you even hit 4, yeah, I'll take the under on that. But yeah, always great to hear what you're doing on the media trips. Glad they put you up at Disneyland Hotel this time so you can try a little something different. Again, hear all about that in the trip reports, patreon.com/Disney Deciphered. Do you have a Disneyland, getting back to the holidays, do you have a holiday Disneyland do or don't for us as we close out this episode?
So I guess it's technically a Tiana's Disney do or don't, but if you are going during the holiday season or during another busy time of year, you really should be booking Tiana's Bayou Adventure with Lightning Lane Multipass. There is a virtual queue for it. It's going really quickly. And then when the ride breaks down, Disney prioritizes people with Lightning Lanes over people with the virtual queue. So if you're a local, like, great, use the virtual queue. But if you're going on a trip from out of town, this is what you want to have as your first pick for Lightning Lane Multipass.
Great tip. Well, again, thank you, Leslie, for sharing all of your experience. We're going to close it out here as we head into the Thanksgiving break. We want to wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving. We have our annual Thanksgiving episode coming out next week. Before we head out, Leslie, just want to say one more time, where can people find you on the internet, especially your Disneyland holiday guide that you just put up recently?
tripswithtykes.com, and I'm at tripswithtykes everywhere on social media, now on Blue Sky, as is our podcast, right, Joe? You've added us to Blue Sky. And
yes, I have added us to Blue Sky, yes.
Where can folks find you, Joe?
At AsJoeFlies, all over social media. Joseph Chung at travelmation.net if you're looking to book a trip, even a last-minute trip to Disney World or Disneyland to enjoy the holidays in 2024. Thank you, everyone, for listening today. And other than that, Leslie, thank you for taking the time to talk to me, and I will see you actively avoiding getting wet on Tiana's.
Thanks, Joe.